to Metropole Television. You're watching Business AM. Just before we went to the break, I did hint that we're talking about how KRA is now running to technology to try and actually move closer to their targets for this year, which everybody does know is the tune of 2.12 trillion shillings. Now, the introduction and use of the integrated scanner system by the Kenya Revenue Authority has helped the taxman increase customs duties by 17%. Now, according to KRA Commissioner for Customs and Border Control, Kevin Safari, the integrated system has helped the authority to track down tax evaders, that is, increase the number of goods scanned by various ports of entry to 90%. Ondibo Ganga reports on the story, and I just want us to look at exactly what that means before we get talking about it. Richie, take us through.
March 2019, through the use of non-intrusive cargo scanners, the Kenya Revenue Authority impounded cargo with Range Rover cars disguised as household goods. A year earlier in 2018, the authority had impounded containers with 21 high-end vehicles estimated to be worth 30 million Kenya shillings. Statistics show that in 2018, Kenya Revenue Authority estimates to have lost up to 300 billion Kenya shillings to tax evaders. As a remedy, KRA is now leveraging on the integrated scanners technology to streamline the cargo clearance sector.
The regional electronic cargo tracking system that has significantly reduced the diversion of transit. What you have seen now is us being able to arrest attempts of transit diversion. In fact, we recently enhanced the cargo tracking system by having more electronic seals and even geomapping more areas on it. Previously, we would have up to 60% of the cargo being verified. That is now down up to about 10% and not reduce that even further. And that enhances the competitiveness of the ports of entry.
According to Safari, the system has enabled KRA to increase its revenue share since it's now able to close in on tax evaders.
In terms of tax evasion, this cargo scanning system also addressed that. And we have seen, especially ethanol, which has been smuggled in large quantities, being arrested at this point. We have seen revenue growing. Last month, we actually grew by about 17% growth of revenue as a result of these interventions.
The visiting World Customs Organization Secretary has hailed Kenya for its effort in the use of technology. He has, however, urged the country to improve on its skilled labor force to enhance efficiency and productivity.
Technology should be supported by people, human resources. This is very important, and this is why in Kenya I appreciate that Kenya hosts regional office of capacity building. So East and Southern Africa capacity building for human resources, human development is based here. So in that sense, Kenya is a great administration here and shows the progress of East Africa and Africa entirely.
With the incoming of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, it is expected that electronic tracking of cargo will enhance and improve movement of cargo and hence increase the number of cargo that comes into the country. This will also go a long way in growing revenue for the Kenya Revenue Authority and in turn the Kenyan government and increase Kenya's competitiveness as a regional point of entry. For Metropole TV from Times Towers, Nairobi, I'm Ondero Oganga.
Thank you very much, Ondero Ganga, for that report. And despite that, I mean, most of the news that we'll be getting this year is that, yes, across all the points, when it comes to tax collection, KRA has posted improvements. But at the end of the day, again, if you look at their tax targets now, also they keep on diminishing. Because right now, we do have the reports that for the first 6 months of 2019, they missed it by 88 billion. And remember, just as we were ending the year, they were told if the trend continues, therefore, you're going to miss it by 120 billion shillings, which they're on course to do that, despite this good news that we're getting from them. Is it good news amid its bad news? Because I don't think that our tax targets for the taxman are going to reduce.
I think you have to give it to the technology,
yes,
and the results that we're getting from Mombasa on how they have managed to increase the taxes, especially in the customs area.
Yes.
And of course, that sounds good for the managers because they know they'll not be sacked. Because
Yes.
KRA right now is on the neck of the managers, especially those who have been performing poorly. So those guys have definitely happy. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is, are we getting enough from the kind of investment that we are making? Because those scanners that you're seeing, that is an investment by this country.
Yes.
What kind of return are we getting from those investments?
They're putting in at 17% in the first month, isn't
Yes.
it?
So if we can be able to fight illicit trade, avoid cases where, like he said, ethanol and vehicles coming in
Yes.
through the scanning of cargo, that is a good thing. And it's a good thing for the country because, as we said earlier, we are trying to have anti-dumping strategies so that we don't end up with low-quality goods in this country through the port. And 100% scanning becomes the solution. But then again, you have to go back to KRA General and look at how the organization is set up and the intentions and the good intentions that they have and how they can be able to manage that. Technology is playing a key role right now in KRA,
Yes.
not just in customs, but in all the other areas. I mean, KRA is now collecting IFMIS data to try and track down tax evaders, and it is working. They're getting data from organizations like Kura and Kenha and other public institutions that people are doing business with, and it is working. And it's a good strategy away from the fights that we saw last year. Last year we had a lot of fights between KRA and traders where people were even being taken to court. For the last 2 or 3 months, the approach has been different. It has been an approach of,
Yes.
come we talk. We know you owe us this money because you've not declared. Come we talk. Come we see how we can be able to ensure that you're compliant. At the end of the day, you will pay the money and you're compliant and you don't have to go to court over that issue. So those are the good things that they're doing. But for the issue of the targets, sometimes I feel it for KRA because, as we've said here before, our targets from Treasury has been incremental, kind of, over the years.
Yes.
And we don't know the basis of these increments. Are the increments just based on, if you collected 3 trillion, we're adding 30%, 10%, so we expect you to give us 3.3.
Yes.
Without looking at the measures to ensure that we get the additional 300 billion.
Yes.
So if we can be able to avoid that kind of budgeting and we go down to zero-based budgeting, we look at the reality on the ground, we look at the areas where we want to invest the money
Yes.
and say, even if we collected 3 trillion last year and the reality on the ground is that we cannot be able to go higher, we set the budget as so. So the issues that KRA has had and the reason why they are not hitting the target every year is because our figures have been just incremental, and the CS Ukura said about it before. He actually said that he does not understand how the former CS was doing budgeting. It does not make sense.
Yes.
From how monies are being allocated to ministries to how targets are being set for KRA. So those are the things that we have to address.
Yes.
Look for a way we can be able to be as realistic as possible so that we don't avoid instances whereby 3 or 4 months down the line or 6 months, we realize we are going to miss the target, then we end up borrowing
Very
to be
much.
able to cover that gap.
Isn't it? I want to ask you this question, which is very pertinent, and people have been really asking me about it. If you look at the way KRA has been actually carried by Mburu since it took that chair, it's been targeting tax evaders.
Yes.
Most of the cases have gone to court, and they're actually trying to use that as a way to actually get their tax targets. Would you advise them to actually leverage on more technology as opposed to leveraging on these tax evaders who are pretty much pushing to court?
I think the Commissioner General, and I'm privy to KRA stuff
Yes.
because that's what I do every day.
Yes.
The Commissioner General came in with so much bravado and he thought he had the solutions. He has tried so many things, by the way. Other than taking people to court, he has tried so many things. Currently, they have changed the system in a way that
Yes.
taxpayers who are compliant get tax compliance automatically. Those who are not compliant cannot even apply for a tax compliance, and that's technology.
Yes.
So the first fight he had was against tax evaders, and he realized that he can actually not shoot them on sight. He has to take them to court.
Pretty much.
And he has also realized that he may not get so much success from the courts, which he can't, because you cannot brand me a tax evader if you do not have evidence. That is critical.
Yes.
If you do not have enough evidence that I'm trying to evade tax, you cannot brand me one, and you will not get a favorable ruling in court. So he realized that is not working. And he realized that these people he's trying to fight also know people.
Yes.
So he fights people and it ends up at his desk. So he's now taken a different approach and is now trying to leverage on technology. And that is something that has started this year,
Yes.
which is a good thing, because with the kind of budgets that KRA has, they can be able to have systems in place that can ensure that all the gaps are actually closed, so that people have to self-declare and self-declare rightly, knowing that the taxman will always catch up with them.
Pretty much.
So if he uses technology correctly, he'll get there. But if he wants to hover around touching each and everything that he feels can be able to work, 1 year down the line, we may even end up with a bigger miss.
Yes.
Not the 120, probably higher. Or in his second stint, 2020, 2021, it actually might be worse.
Pretty much, isn't it? All right, now, I just want us to leave it there, and we'll see exactly what happens as we go on, whether KRA is actually going to meet its 2.12 trillion as it looks they won't. Let's just see exactly by how much they miss it therefore. Just want us to cross over to another issue that we want to complete our economic review on. Now, the banking front, the acquisition of Transnational Bank by Nigerian commercial bank Access Bank has finally taken effect. Now, the bank's acquisition comes nearly 3 months after the Competition Authority of Kenya approved Access Bank's acquisition of a majority stake in Transnational Bank, setting the stage for its entry into Kenya. Access Bank has acquired 93.57% of Transnational Bank's shares. Transnational, which was founded as a non-banking financial institution in 1984, is a mid-tier bank with an asset base of 10 billion shillings and 1.9 billion shillings in shareholder funds. Access Bank, on the other hand, is a Nigerian multinational bank and banks among Nigeria's 5 biggest commercial banks and one of the largest in Africa. Access, which operates in 12 countries across the world, currently has an asset base of 1.2 trillion shillings. Now, what sort of environment do we expect to see locally in the banking sector with the entry of a big boy in the regional market like Access Bank? Now, with the repeal of the rate cap as well, do we anticipate banks competing? Yeah, we're used to the KCB Equity and Cooperative. Now, Nigeria looks to think it can actually come into Kenya and get a fair share of the banking sector. I'm just going to ask you locally, are the big boys going to look back and say, wow, they're back in the country?
I think when you look at how the banks have been performing,
Yes.
especially banks from West Africa, they have not performed so well in this country.
Yes.
And you have to go back to the case of EcoBank. EcoBank came with, we can be able to compete
Yes.
with that kind of attitude.
Yes.
But when you look at their performance, I don't think they have performed to that level that we would have expected EcoBank to perform.
Yes.
So we should not be so much excited that Access Bank is coming, again from the same region, which is West Africa,
Yes.
to try and compete with the big boys in the country. But it's a good thing in terms of investments that the small bank called Transnational, because Transnational it's really a small bank.
It's quite a small bank, yes.
Is being taken over by a bank that has a bit of a foothold
Yes.
in Africa.
Yes.
And we hope that Transnational Access Bank can now be able to do more investments in the bank,
Yes.
so that we can see that bank opening branches and trying to compete. That is good for the economy, because actually we can be able to see creation of employment in that area. But away from that bank, we have banks that have had a stronghold of this economy. And the problem that we have in this country is away from the banking sector. That is how it works. When you go to electricity, when you go to telecommunication, you always have homegrown entities, homegrown companies that take control of those sectors. And that is what has been happening in this country. And with the kind of mergers that we've been seeing from the banks, we expect a lot from these merged entities in terms of output and the kind of products they can be able to come up to compete in the market. And we hope Access Bank can also be able to do that.
Yes.
Now that we don't have the interest rate cap, the banks can be able to openly compete.
Yes.
We want to see them out there in a football pitch, competing
Yes.
for a win, to get people on board.
But Enoch, they're not doing that.
I know.
It's what we said. You and I spoke about this, and then we said, okay, it's been repealed in the last quarter of the year. It's gonna be, let's actually try and see how we clear the year, and then once we begin the second quarter or the first quarter of next year, we will be actually now trying to have competitive rates and products that are actually targeted for the mass market. As it stands, we're still talking about the 13% interest, which has been the one that we've been talking about even during the cap rate regime.
No, I think there's been a lot of confusion in the banking sector, and what the big boys are doing is that they are monitoring, especially
Yes.
the mergers,
Yes.
to see how it goes.
Yes.
Remember, NCBA and CBA and NIC merged to be one of the biggest banks in this country.
Yes.
And I think the other banks are having a wait and see approach to be able to see what kind of products can these banks come up with, because even in a game of chess, someone has to make a move.
Yes.
And in economics, that is what the banks are waiting. They're waiting for the first bank that will be bold enough to make the move. Then they will also make the move. Based on that first move,
Yes.
we can then be able to see a lot of activity. I think for them right now, they are waiting, knowing that already they are getting business. People are taking up credit, but they don't want to excite the public and make a move. Then another bank makes a better move, which may actually kill their products.
Yes.
So that is the game that probably the banks are playing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Finally, Enoch, just one word as we complete this conversation this morning. Do we expect to see any increment in interest rates from the banks, because that's exactly what they were crying for?
Definitely.
Definitely.
We expect to see an increase in the interest rates. Here is how the products, the banks might place their products.
Yes.
For the period that we had interest rate caps, unsecured loans were very low. Me and you could not access loans at the bank. And those are the products that Kenyans have been relying on for a long time. So the banks may bring back the unsecured loans, the salary advances that we used to have, at a very high interest rate, probably 17 or 18%. Then they'll have secured loans probably remaining at the same rate, 13%.
Yes.
That is how then they can be able to place the other products. Yes.
Pretty much. Enoch, always a pleasure to speak to you, man.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Now, that's exactly what we had planned for you this morning on our Metropole Economic Review. Catch this conversation live on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And the good thing about YouTube is you can take us a couple of minutes back so you can listen on exactly the insights that CPA Enoch Monari had for you this morning. Good morning. This is Metropole Television.